Welcome everyone back to weekly weather updates, and in today's video we're going to have another look at the latest from the weekly mean anomaly charts from the ECMWF. Now, our last update a couple of weeks ago, we did see that the charts were showing quite a blocked and cold February coming in. Some of the coldest charts I've seen from those weekly mean anomalies. Now, we haven't quite seen that develop, at least for the first third of February. Of course, we've seen some colder or cooler weather. We saw some significant snow in the north last week, but really nothing to shout about. So yeah, a little bit of a fail with that last update. Hopefully this update is a little bit better and a little bit and it actually comes off what we are seeing in the charts today. Now, we are still seeing some blocking from these charts, but I must say the cold signal is nowhere near as strong, but it still is there to a certain extent. So we'll run through the latest from the 500 HPA height anomaly, so looking at pressure charts, then we'll have a look at some of the temperature charts, and then we'll finish up by having a look at the weather regimes, essentially what are the ensembles saying in terms of the NAO, AO, Scandinavian block, Atlantic ridging, etc. That one is very interesting because, as you've maybe have seen from yesterday's video, we are looking at a pretty major southern stratospheric warming coming up, and that would definitely increase the chances of blocking in the medium to longer term. So yeah, could be starting to feed through into these weekly anomaly charts for the end of February and start of March. Now, if we do first have a look here, this is from the 12th of February until the 19th of February. You can see there's blocking to our north, but we've still got high pressure to our south, which essentially gives us quite a muddled picture, where if we just had blocking to the north, you'd think easterly or northerly winds, but because of the higher pressure further southwards, it means, yes, higher pressure to our north, but winds most likely coming in from the west still, as we see the jet stream still powering in to our south, and that's what we've seen recently with cooler patterns. But because it's nothing major, and because we are still seeing the westerly winds trying to break through, it isn't anything major in terms of colder conditions. Still milder conditions very close by or in for southern areas, so a little bit in between here. So not necessarily a definitive fail from the update we did a week or two ago, definitely in terms of the absolute sort of temperature anomalies, but in terms of pressure patterns, it's not too different than what we saw in those anomaly charts. But the big difference is this higher pressure to our south, meaning the jet stream isn't as far south as initially anticipated, and we're not seeing lower pressure in the near continent bringing in easterly or northerly winds. Now, this goes to, as I said, the 19th of February, kind of in between, perhaps a bit of a transition week, because the following week we do see that low pressure replace the higher pressure to our south, lower pressure replacing higher pressure towards Scandinavia, with that higher pressure dominating towards Greenland and Iceland. Now, this would suggest a bit of a battleground situation. Northeasterly or easterly winds coming in from Scandinavia and Eastern Europe that looks, as we'll see from the temperature charts in a minute, very cold. But we're still seeing the jet stream trying to break through with a westerly flow with all this low pressure out in the North Atlantic. Now, it is further southwards than you'd expect from a sort of a flat westerly stormy pattern, but it's not far enough southward to say it's completely out of play. So it could be a bit of a battleground, cold air from the northeast against milder, wet conditions and low pressure in from the west. So it could actually be a relatively wintry pattern if the battleground happened right on our shores. Happen a bit too far eastwards or northwards, we're all in the milder air with the peripheries of cold. Happens further westwards, then we're all in much colder conditions. Probably still would be seeing some wintriness with those winds coming in off the North Sea. Now, from the end of February until early March, low pressure actually breaks through, so that could suggest that it is a battleground initially, and then lower pressure breaking through. Still blocking quite substantially to our north and our east, and even up towards northeast Canada and Greenland still, but not in the positions, from the looks of it, that would give us something majorly cold. Still most likely a southerly tracking jet, so still could be wintry potential, but nothing too crazy at this stage. The week following that, similar. Jet stream maybe shifts slightly further southwards again, more blocking to our north, and the week following that, very, very similar. So it does look like from these weekly anomalies, a bit of a battleground situation, as I've said. High pressure still to our north, blocking, still trying to force the jet stream southwards, but not pushing it far enough southwards to sort of guarantee a colder pattern, more sort of oscillating, potentially cold weather winning out at times, maybe milder air winning out at times, could be fairly wintry and could actually be pretty similar to what we saw last week with more snow events like that. So that is one to watch. As I said though, the last update, it didn't quite come off like that. The temperatures were quite a bit more mixed and milder, but the pressure was similar but slightly different. So if we saw slight altercations to this, it could actually turn it a lot milder, or it could actually turn it a lot colder, depending on where those alterations do occur. Now, if you have a look at the raw temperature anomalies for this, you can see this upcoming week is fairly mild. Interestingly though, lots of cold air to our north and our east. So if we did tap into an easterly or northeasterly flow, it could go pretty cold indeed, but we'd have to get those winds in the first place. The following week, cold air still to our north and east, still milder air nearby, not too much of a change. The week following that, the cold air nudges our way a little bit. Of course, the anomaly gets a little bit weaker as we do go further out, but to the end of February, start of March, colder conditions do start to push in, and then into early March, pretty similar, and that stays all the way to the end of the run. So the last sort of 4 weeks of this, so now everything outside of the next 2 weeks really, suggests cold northeasterly winds trying to push in, but not being 100% successful. So pretty much going along with the lines with what I saw in the pressure charts, which is a battleground situation. But as I said, slight alterations in this can change this pattern completely to a very cold pattern, a widely very cold pattern, or a widely very mild, wet and windy pattern, all dependent on that blocking. And I don't want to be anywhere near as bullish this time because of what happened with our last update, where it didn't quite come off anywhere near as cold as those charts did imply. But as I said, still got to wait for this sun stratospheric warming to propagate through. From the looks of it, it could be catching on, but probably not anywhere near as much as it will do eventually. It doesn't necessarily mean the blocking will come off, but traditionally, when we see an SSW starting to filter through into the middle to longer range runs, we do see quite a substantial response, and then they start to sort of moderate and agree on what is going to happen. And I've finished by looking at those weather regime charts. Again, I'll go through this briefly. Blue is a positive NAO, so that's westerly winds, unsettled, wet conditions. Block is Scandinavian block, so easterly winds would be favoured. Negative NAO is high pressure up towards Greenland, and that would be suggestive of more northerly flows or a southerly tracking jet stream. Purple is an Atlantic ridge, so that's perhaps northerly flows, but nothing sustained as the jet stream is still fairly active, and no regime, so nothing really kind of in between. You can see over the past few days and over the next couple of days, we've got greens, which is suggestive of a negative NAO, and that feeds into what we saw last week with that snow event with colder air coming in, but not quite holding off the milder air coming in off the Atlantic. You can see, though, in the next week or two, showing quite a substantial Scandinavian block. Now, we have seen that over the past few videos. We look at the sort of GFS, GM, East, and whatever. We have seen quite a few easterly patterns developing from some of the runs, specifically the GFS, of course. So perhaps that could actually be a legitimate pattern. Again, you can see it is only a bar here, so it's not guaranteed. That's just quite a large number of ECMWF ensembles are showing that. In the extended range, though, no regime, giving the indication the models don't have a clue. Seeing quite a big split here. I would say blocking probably more favoured than a positive NAO. Not seeing a lot of blues here at all in the longer range, but no definitive signal. And again, it plays into what I've been saying for the past few days. The longer range, the models don't have a clue. Not only are the weather patterns very confusing at the moment, we've had a lot of talk of blocking and colder weather. We saw that in the weekly anomalies a couple of weeks ago. Not really coming off, but of course now we've got that SSW to mix in, and I think it is going to cause a lot of confusion, a lot of volatility within the models in the near future. So hopefully this update has been a little bit insightful. Again, it's difficult to come up with a conclusive answer of what could be happening over the next few weeks because of the difficulty we've had with the last update, which didn't quite come off. And I admit that, yeah, we were a little bit too bullish with that, but I've never seen such a strong signal, so I did go with it because I thought The ECMWF definitely caught onto something here, but obviously had got caught onto something that hasn't quite come off. But there is the risk still into the second half of the month. That blocking pattern is still there, just not quite as bullish, but it could get propagated further and amplified more with this upcoming SSW. So anyway, thanks for watching, hope you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new, and I'll see you again for another video soon.